Okay, everyone, welcome to Reems Creek Nursery this morning. It's a gorgeous, nice, fallish feeling day. And thank you for joining us. And we have Pete Dixon with us this morning. He's going to be talking about creating a whole yard habitat for butterflies. So we appreciate all of you coming out, and I am going to turn the screen over to Pete, but I do want to say a little bit about Pete before I turn it over to him. I've known Pete for a really long time. I think since he's lived up here, I met him when he had tiny babies on hip, and they're now grown up. So he is an excellent farmer. He and his wife Mary are excellent farmers in Madison County in Hot Springs. They have a beautiful farm. They have some farm cabins that they rent out. And beyond all that, Pete has become an incredible naturalist. I follow him on Instagram. I think it's called Pete Elliott, where he posts gorgeous pictures all the time of butterflies and dragonflies and just beautiful pictures. But he's very involved with the library in Madison County and creating some resources that, especially for children, but for people of all ages, that involve our natural world. So Pete may be able to elaborate on that just a little more. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Pete. Thank you very much for joining us today, Pete.
Hey everybody, thank you, Ruth. I'm glad to see all y'all's happy faces, and I'm going to try to engage the screen sharing now and get going with some. Is that, do you guys see the butterfly picture there?
Looking good.
Okay, good-o. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started here. All right, we have encountered our first technical difficulty. Stop sharing. I'm going to have to take another shot at that because I lost my controls of my screen when I hit screen sharing. So we're going to try it again. And
hey, Pete.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
Yeah, talk loud if possible.
I'll talk loud. I'll talk loud. Okay. So this is a presentation about butterflies and creating butterfly habitat and discovering diversity in our own yards. The Southern Appalachians are naturally very diverse, and we are so lucky to interact with this diversity in our native environment. We get to play with natural diversity like children playing in a creek, building a dam with stones. We don't create diversity here. We don't have to, but we can influence it while it flows past doors in our yards and fields and forests. So I am here talking to you all because of this project, Madison Natural Heritage. Madison Natural Heritage is a digital natural history project. It's a Madison County Public Library project, and it is free to all. Let's talk butterflies now. There are about 100 species of butterflies in our area, but that's a changing number. Some disappear from the area, some show up. Their diversity is closely linked to botanical diversity, and that's our best tool to influence butterflies and butterfly diversity. Most species are easily overlooked. It's worth taking a closer look, so let's do that. Let's take a closer look at some of our local butterflies, and I think it's worth taking a look at their family groupings too, because recognizing the families gives us insight about patterns and provides us a handle in recognizing and identifying.
Pete, could you share your screen again, please?
Sure. Let's go back to my Zoom meeting. Share screen. Are we sharing?
Not yet.
Okay, how about now?
No. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, how about now?
Yep. Looking good.
Okay. We still good?
Yep.
All right, and I have my controls still, so here we are. All right. Swallowtails. Swallowtails, they are the attention getters. They are not easily overlooked. They're influencers in today's lingo, but it's actually true in their case. This is a pipevine swallowtail, and as far as being an influencer, it has spawned a whole complex of lookalikes because it is distasteful. These are mimics, species which benefit from appearing like a poison or distasteful species. And throughout this presentation, we're going to be coming across butterflies that look a lot like this, and they are considered to be part of the pipevine complex. Okay, so these guys don't just seem like influencers, they are. They're very showy. So we're going to go from the pipevine swallowtail to the zebra swallowtail. It hosts on pawpaw. It has the longest tail. It's a show-off. They're very tame. To find zebra swallowtails, find pawpaws. To attract zebra swallowtails, plant pawpaws. The giant swallowtail, really showy, probably a migrant to our area. Okay, leaving swallowtails now, going to the whites. The whites, it's easy to lump the whites in with what people frequently incorrectly call cabbage moths. The whites are not moths, and some of them are really striking, like this falcate orange tip. But because we're used to sort of discounting cabbage moths, which are actually cabbage whites, we tend to look over these butterflies, but there's some really beautiful whites in our area. Sulfurs.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah, yes, Ruth.
Are all the cabbage whites, are all of them going to use the greens as a host plant, broccoli and such?
Most of them are associated with Brassicas, cruciferae, but not all of them are going to be in our garden. Some of them are closely associated with specific mustard plants out in the wild. As far as the garden goes, the only ones that I know that host on our cabbage plants and our collard plants and our kale plants are the cabbage whites, but there are several other whites which are not cabbage whites. And sulfurs are also in the same family, Pyrridae. A close look at sulfurs reveals they are stunning and they have some of the best colors, like this sleepy orange whose wings are bright orange tinged with pink. This is a fall butterfly. They're out there right now. If you see bright, bright orange butterflies out there right now, you're probably looking at a sleepy orange. Around rich cove habitat, which I know around North Asheville and Reems Creek, there's a lot of rich cove habitat. Around rich cove habitat, look for the West Virginia white. They're all white. They nectar on toothworts, which are the wild cardamom plants. And they have that slight gray hint on the front of their wings, but no spots. Most of the whites and sulfurs have some spots. These guys are just kind of monotone. A note here too, when I say hosting, that means where the caterpillars stay, and where the caterpillars live. That's usually an obligatory relationship. They don't get to lay their eggs and have caterpillars anywhere. They kind of host with one or a few plants, but many butterflies will feed, they will nectar or feed on many plants. So you might hear me say nectaring versus hosting, very different things, and hosting is usually way more limiting. So before we move on to the next butterfly family, I just want to note that optics and magnification are a big help when watching butterflies. Without maybe some binoculars that can focus close, like these This particular brand of Pentax binoculars is very popular with butterfly watchers, and they're not expensive. Taking pictures is pretty easy. You can just clip on one of these lenses onto your iPhone or smartphone, but optics really do help with watching butterflies and getting to know butterflies. Tiny and beautiful, the blues and their kin. You really do need optics to see these. This group includes blues, hair streaks, azures, elfins, coppers, and harvesters. All are small. Most are gray or blue. They're a diverse lot with many striking butterflies in this group. Harvest.
How big are they?
You know, as big as they get would maybe be a quarter in the whole family. I think the biggest ones you might see would be probably as big as a quarter. Around here, I think there are some hair streaks in other areas that are bigger than that, but around here, I think a quarter is about the top size for them there. But this is a harvester, and harvesters, interestingly, are the only North American butterfly whose larvae are obligate predators, meaning they have to eat other animals to stay alive. They feed on aphids, which live on alders. The adults are not predators. They just usually fly around licking up minerals from gravel and things like that. I've never seen them nectaring on a plant. This one is nectaring on my sock. Pretty horrible. Okay, the eastern tailed blue. This is our smallest butterfly in this area, and they vary in size from dime sized all the way down to the size of a thumbtack head. Notice the tiny tail. They both started with that tail, but only that male kept the tail. Hair streaks are beautiful. Hair streaks are named for those tiny tails. They're fast and chaotic flyers, hard to focus on. When they land, they're usually rubbing their hind wings together, moving those tiny tails back and forth. The hairs look like little antennae, and the spots on the back of their wing look like eyes. It's a head fake to throw off predators, so that when a predator makes a lunge at one of these, they'll go for the back of the wings instead of the front. And you do frequently see butterflies with little bite-sized pieces missing from their hind wing, where a bird or something has grabbed them by the hind wing, but they got away. This is a juniper hair streak. It's a very unusual green color. In fact, other than leaves in the fall, I can't think of another single thing which is this kind of strange brownish green color. They host on cedar trees, so if you have concentrations of cedar trees, you may have these around your neighborhood. This one was nectaring on Tithonia, also known as Mexican sunflower. You will see a lot of Tithonia in here. It is a favorite for butterflies.
Hey, Pete, excuse me. I just saw a request in chat if you could talk about the host plant and the nectaring plant. You have already some, but for each one, if possible.
I will, if possible. I don't actually know the host plant and the nectaring plant for all of these. The nectaring plants are frequently pretty diverse. The host plants are not so diverse. When I know the host plant, I will try to remember to throw it in. So here is a gray hair streak nectaring on wing stem. You know, I hear people griping about wing stem, and I'm not sure why. Many pollinators love it. This is a brown elfin. Elfins, we're still in the Lacinidae group, blues in their kin. Elfins are all tiny and brown. It would really be easy to go your whole life and never notice a single elfin, and that would be sad. I think I never even noticed an elfin until I was like 50 years old. Changing families now. This is a common wood nymph. This is a shadow dweller in a family of shadow-loving butterflies, which is unusual. Most butterflies, you go to the sun to find butterflies. If you're walking through the woods and you want to find butterflies, look for a sunny spot. But not so with the satyrs. This family, the satyrs, are found in shady wooded places. If you have a bit of woods on your property, you probably don't need to do anything to attract the satyrs. They're probably already there. Many are small, some are medium-sized. A few, like the wood nymph, the common wood nymph, might even verge on large, but most of the satyrs that you see are small. Here's a gemmed satyr, characteristically soft and fuzzy and brown, like you would expect for a little woods-dwelling butterfly. Those little spots on the rear are in the sun. They're quite sparkly. It's hard to get a picture of the sparkles. I tried to get a picture of the sparkles, and you can see one sparkling, but there's actually like 4 sparkles back there. But those little spots on the back, they look like weird, kind of creepy little eyes. Not exactly sure what they're trying to be, but if you look close at those little spots, they kind of look like little caves or something peeking out of a little cave. The Appalachian Brown, also a satyr. These guys are not common. Of all the satyrs that we have around here, these are probably the rarest. They host on sedges. So you can generally find them around the grassy, wet spots around meadows, maybe in wet, lurky spots in the forest. Look for sedges, and then look for a brown butterfly flitting around in the shadows, and you might be looking at a Appalachian Brown. And they're maybe the size of a $50. They have those lovely eye spots. We also, in the satyr family, we also have the pearly eyes, both Creole pearly eyes, which are found around the river, and northern pearly eyes.
There's a question, did you take all of these pictures in Madison County?
I did. I think I took them all in Madison County, but I don't think there's any of these. There might be 1 or 2 of these butterflies, which is not in Buncombe County, or probably just not found yet in Buncombe County, but I took all these in Madison County, and I think they're generally going to be found in both Madison and Buncombe. So we're changing families again. This is a common buckeye, and it is really one of the most common butterflies. But in spite of being really common, it's really striking. If you don't really pay attention to it, it just seems like a fast brown thing shooting across a field or over the pastures, which is where they live, in tall grass around fields and pastures. This one is nectaring on dogbane, also called Indian hemp. It's one of those weedy meadow flowers, but it can actually attract quite a bit of pollinator activity. Buckeyes are nymphs, also called brush-footed butterflies. They walk around on 4 legs. All the nymphs walk around on 4 legs instead of 6. They keep their front pair tucked up against their thorax, and they have little brushes on their front. Loud beeping going on, Ruth. Is that affecting?
I don't know what that is. I'm sorry.
Okay. I've heard the brush foot adaptation is used in courtship, but I don't know, and I haven't watched them do that, so I can't attest to that. But the nymphs are a very diverse group of butterflies, both in size and forms and numbers of species. And the nymphs include this Diana Fritillary, which is really a beautiful, wonderful butterfly, geographically limited to just our area, the Southern Appalachians, and also the Ozarks. People travel from all over the country. I've had people call me up on the phone and say they want to come to the area to find Diana Fritillary. So these are very popular, and they have a certain sort of a personality too. They tend to tame down. If you approach them, they'll be sort of standoffish at first, but if you keep following them around, they'll kind of get used to you, which gives them sort of a more sentient sense about them. They also live for a long time. They'll be around. They'll first appear in June, and then they'll disappear. I don't know where they go, maybe up to the treetops, but then they'll reappear in the fall. And I've been seeing them lately, nectaring on bull thistle. But when they reappear in the fall, their wings are always a bit up a little bit compared to when you see them in the spring.
All right. So is your assessment that she needs to stay in the hospital?
Okay, we have somebody talking about being in the hospital. Ruth, are you hearing that? Okay, so the Diana Fritillaries also show striking sexual dimorphism. This is a comparison between the male and the female, the male being on the female being on the left. The female, you may notice, is also considered to be in that pipevine complex, wherein they benefit from looking like a poison or distasteful butterfly, which they are not. A sidebar here, when you start attracting diversity, you're going to be attracting predators too. And I have a little diversity predator story here that goes along with the Diana Fritillary and these really large clubtail dragonflies called dragon hunters. I was watching a Diana Fritillary on a gravel road. It was feeding on the gravel road, probably getting minerals out of the wet gravel. And I noticed that it was being shadowed by one of these really large dragonflies. And every time the Diana Fritillary would take up and move, the dragonfly would just fall in behind, carefully staying behind it and just shadow it to the next location where it would land and then land. And this went on for a good long while, and I wondered how it was going to resolve itself. And then a truck was coming down the road, and right when that truck got even with the Diana Fritillary and the Diana Fritillary took off, the dragonfly, without really even breaking a sweat, just grabbed it and flew up in a tree and started to cut its wings off. It was maybe one of the coolest acts of predation I had ever seen, in that he just played it cool, laid low, waited for his moment, and then took the butterfly right out of the air easily. Here's more fritillaries. These are great spangled fritillaries. They are nectaring on swamp milkweed, which in my opinion is, for attracting butterflies, the best milkweed. I think that the monarchs prefer to host on common milkweed, but they will host on other milkweeds as well. But for just getting butterflies into your yard to watch, the swamp milkweed is really just super attractive. The American lady, we're still talking about nymphs. We have two ladies here which closely resemble each other. The American lady, which has 2 spots, and we'll see the painted lady in a second, which has 4 spots on the hind wing. But one of the things here I like about this picture is you can see the continuity here of the flower pattern and this wing pattern. It's almost like the flower pattern just extends right up onto the wing. And then if you look above the flower pattern here and you see those 2 spots, you can kind of imagine why these 2 spots evolved. Those 2 spots look like some big googly eyes just peering right up over the flower. It kind of reminds me of this right here, looking over the flower. But here's a side-by-side comparison here between 2 butterflies that are hard to tell apart. The American lady over here and the painted lady over here. The painted lady is a little bigger and frequently a little more pinkish, but you can't really tell from that. Also, the American lady has this little spot, but not all of them have it. You really have to go with the 2 spots for the American lady and the 4 spots for the painted lady, and that can be a little bit hard to tell. I just remember it like this. Americans just don't have time to paint all those spots. So that keeps you on track with the American versus the painted lady. So here we have the another, I just thought while we were in the theme of hard to tell apart butterflies, we have over here the question mark, and we're still in nymphs, brush-footed butterflies, the question mark on the left, the eastern comma on the right, and here we go with 2 spots up here and 1 spot over here. And this is really the best way to tell these apart. They are variable. The question marks could look a lot more like this. These question marks would usually be a little bit larger, but if you go with the 2 spot, 1 spot ID, you can't mess up. There's this on the outside, but this is not reliable. A lot of guidebooks will tell you to look at this spot right here and say that it will be just 1 if it's a comma and 2 if it's a question mark, but this is an example. This is a question mark and it's just 1. So that little ID, which is frequently shown in guidebooks, is not reliable. For the really, for sure reliability, you got to go with the upper front wing, 2 spots on the question mark, 1 spot for the comma. Okay, we are finishing up the nymphs. There's 31 nymphs in our area. This is the red spotted purple. It's a beautiful, beautiful, stunning butterfly, flies very fast. It is also in the pipevine complex. You could see that combination of blue and black. Changing families now. Moving on to the skippers, the snazziest butterflies. They're recognizable for their delta wing configuration. They're like a little triangle, and they have swept back clubs on their antenna. The top of their clubs, and we'll see this in other pictures, are swept back. And it actually, they tuck their clubs in against their body when they fly, so those their antenna just fit in nicely against their body. Most of these are small. They're not all tiny, but some of them would be medium, but most skippers are small. They're very colorful, very distinct, a bunch of striking skippers. This is the Leonard Skipper, which is now getting quite rare, and they are declining. This one is on Ironweed, and Ironweed is a good one to pay attention to and a good one to get in your yard. A lot of skippers host on various grass plants. So most people don't plant grasses to attract skippers. They fly around a lot, so you can probably get a diversity of skippers in your yard just with nectar plants and not the host plants. I will say 40 and counting because this group really isn't that static. The Leonard Skippers are declining. There hasn't once been spotted in Buncombe County in several years. This one is from Madison County, but there's other ones that are appearing too. Like the Eufaula skipper has just recently come up in the area. So it's 40 and counting. It is not a static number. Here is a male crossline skipper, and he is exhibiting that sort of scrappy, territorial male skipper attitude. And they are quite scrappy little characters. He's on guard. He is ready to fly off after anything that comes near him. They will fly after birds. They will fly after bumblebees, dragonflies. They don't care if they see a silhouette in their area. They fly towards it when they're sort of at their peak of their territorialism. And probably they don't have a problem doing that because they are very agile, very fast flyers. If you look here on the wing, this little black streak right here, that is called the stigmata, and it is often characteristics of a species. You look for the stigmata, the placement on the males to help tell which species it is, and it is actually a scent gland. Changing groups within the skippers, this is a different group of skippers, and here you see those characteristic swept back antenna. But this is a group of skippers called the spread wing skippers. They generally, not always, but frequently land with their wings open. This is the rare golden banded skipper. not common at all. If any of you all know Gail Langford, she is a Weaverville person, and if she knew I had this picture in the slideshow, she might be mad, especially if I told you where I took it. Gail Langford is very protective and territorial about her skippers or her butterflies. In the spread wing skipper family, we have dusky wings. Now, this little group of butterflies, spread wing skippers, are very hard to tell apart. It's often easy just to look and say, okay, it's a dusky wing, and not really be able to know which dusky wing it is. You have to study them hard. I've been studying dusky wings for 4 years, and I still have to sometimes just take a pass on making an identification. This, I can tell, is an indigo dusky wing. They host on legumes. I think crown vetch is one that they're known to host on. Let's see, but without knowing the season, you know, if you just took a picture of a dusky wing and showed it to somebody and you didn't tell them what season it was, it just might not even be possible to know what dusky wing it is. Another spread wing skipper with his wings closed, and these all characteristically land with their wings closed, even though they are in the spread wing skipper family. This is a very uncommon butterfly, the hoary edge, because the back edge here is kind of a, you know, a mottled white, the hoary color. They have a very common close relative, the silver spotted skipper. And this is one of our most common butterflies. This one is nectaring on buttonbush. And buttonbush is a great one to have in your yard. If you look around rivers and creeks, you can frequently find a little spare buttonbush which you can dig up. They're easy to transplant. They like to have wet feet. They don't have to be wet when you grow them in your garden, but you're going to want to keep it wet while you transplant it, and for maybe the first season or so. The buttonbush attracts a lot of skipper action and hair streak action in the spring. No, June, July, actually, but early in the butterfly year. And I have a little story that goes along with the buttonbush. I was watching butterflies on a buttonbush one day, and I started to notice several dead silver spotted skippers hanging around the buttonbush. They were sort of tucked up under leaves or just hanging off flowers and so forth. And as I inspected more closely, I started to see hiding up under there several of these fishing spiders. This is a dark fishing spider, and they're big, and they're usually right around water, as is buttonbush. And there was, on one bush, there was probably 4 or 5 of these spiders around, and it was pretty fun to watch. I didn't see any actual hunting take place, but it was neat to see the predator and the prey in the same area. I came back a few days later, and most of the butterfly action had died down. But then at this point, there were several of these really large spider wasps, these wasps which then prey on large spiders, drag them off, bury them with a larva. And I thought it was really quite neat how this nectar had spawned this whole sort of mini ecosystem right there on the creek bank. Another spread-wing skipper. It is the very tiny, common checkered skipper. Common is part of the name. They're not really common, but they're probably overlooked a lot because they're tiny, maybe the size of a penny or a dime, or more elongated, but not more surface area than that. But if you get up close to them and you look at them, they're quite stunning. They have a bit of blue-green iridescence on them. They're probably generally mistaken for tiny moths because you'll see them around in your garden or in your grass. You'll see them fly by, and they look like a little gray moth. And this brings up an interesting question or an interesting problem when you're watching butterflies and you see something fly by. Was it a moth or was it a butterfly? And anatomically, the difference is the moths have branched antenna and butterflies have clubbed antenna. But when they're flitting by, you don't really get the option of telling where those antennas branched or where they clubbed. But the trick that I use is more often to see the landing. Butterflies have a controlled landing. Moths tend to just crash into something and call it good. And that probably goes along with moths being generally more nocturnal. But the landing is an easy way to tell whether things are moths or butterflies. Usually, it's not 100%, but usually. So this slide is a good segue into starting to talk about managing plants to attract butterfly diversity in our little habitats that we control. Because this little white aster, and I don't know any other name other, I don't know a proper name for it, but it's a very spindly, small flower, white aster, but these checkered skippers just love it. And so I mow around it. When I see this aster around, like beside my mailbox or by a fence post or something like that, it sprouts in the late summer. It starts to shoot up and get pretty big in the late summer. I'll just mow around it. And that's really the easiest method of managing your landscape for butterflies. It's the just mow around it theory in practice. And just remember, there's a huge seed bank all around us in nature. There's no doubt dozens of plants lurking around your land that would love to germinate and grow. And some of them are probably pretty neat plants, and they may be associated with your butterfly diversity. So watch butterflies in your neighborhood. If you see in little wild places around your neighborhood what they like, then look for that in your yard and then just mow around it. In the land that I live on, that I manage, the cool stuff that I like to try to mow around is milkweed, ironweed, joe pye, goldenrod, wingstem, red clover, lyre-leaf sage, dog bane, false foxgloves. Those are all ones that I've noticed really attract a lot of attention. And if I see them, I'll just make a point. In my hay field, I'll go out before my hay guy comes, and I will just use my bush hog and mow a circle around stuff that I want him to miss. And he is nice enough to just mow the hay right around the things that I picked out.
Pete, there was a question, was that a white woods aster?
Good question. I don't know the name of that aster. I just know that I like it. Attracts those little checkered white skippers. It's very spindly. The leaves are small. The flowers are small. It's not showy. It just kind of looks like a white puffy cloud along the roadsides and along the fence. It does not look like a showy aster like some of them. But it gets a good bit of action in the field. Some fritillaries will like it, variegated fritillaries, buckeyes like it, and little skippers like it too. So along with the just mow around it theory, there's also the disturbance timing. If you pick out different parts of your property that you manage and you mow things on a different timing, obviously our yards, we like to mow them every week or even more than every week, but some places you might just say, hey, I'm going to mow this little spot less often. And you'll get very different composition of the plants there. You'll get all different kinds of plants here. This is the false foxglove. It's very attractive to skippers. And so, and it's in my hay fields that only get mowed twice a year. But it's also host, the false foxglove is host to the buckeye butterflies, which are very beautiful. And so I like to leave the false foxglove there for these caterpillars. And just recently I took this picture and there was hundreds of these caterpillars on my false foxglove. So as I mentioned before, ironweed is a great one. If you don't have some ironweed in your garden, you should get some. It's a perennial. Probably buy it at Reems Creek Nursery or get it from a seed catalog, or just grab a seed head from the roadside and just shake it around your yard and wait till you see it coming up around the margin somewhere. It's good to have against a fence or by a post or something like that. and it will attract a lot of skippers. This is a grass skipper. It's a sachem skipper. It hosts on grass, and it is one of our most common skippers. It's very generic. It's kind of like when you look at a grass skipper, you say, why isn't it a sachem skipper? You kind of start with the default mode of it's a sachem and then say, well, why isn't it a sachem? Because it's very generic, very middle of the road. But this little dark spot in the middle of the hind wing is characteristic. And on the inside, they have a matching dark spot on the inside. Another very common skipper, which comes from nectar on ironweed regularly, is the fiery skipper. They're very bright, very beautiful, easily overlooked just because they're small. Here's another view of a fiery skipper with the inside. Here you can see the stigmata forms a little diagonal line, and the inner wing marking has this sort of little staircase that I look for with a fiery skipper. When they open their wings, you look for that staircase, which goes down to the stigmata on the bottom. That's on some cosmos. Cosmos are great for nectaring. Skippers have really busy, interesting lives. They pack a lot in just a couple of weeks. They are territorial. This is some courtship action, maybe even a little bit adultish of a photograph, but they just live a few weeks and they're very busy. They get it all done in just a short time. So, not a monarch. This is another complex, the monarch complex. This one can be told from the monarchs because this dark median line on the hind wing, it looks so much like a monarch, and without that line, I really would have a hard time knowing that it wasn't a monarch. But these guys host on willow trees, and they're easy to attract. All you need is some willow trees, and they'll probably come along. They're a bit smaller, a bit redder than a monarch, but if you have a little wet spot on your property somewhere, there's probably some willow seeds in there wanting to germinate, and if you let some little weedy willows come up in your creek or by a little water area that you have, you'll probably get some viceroys. While we're here and we have this nice wing view, we can talk about some of the wing anatomy. This is the hind wing, this is the front wing. In books, this will be FW, HW, and then this is the upper side. This is UW, and the other side is LW. So front wing, hind wing, upper wing, lower wing. This is the costal area, the costus, and this is the margin. And in your field guides, these things will be mentioned regularly. And this would be called a median line because it's up the middle. Sometimes they'll say something is sub-median or post-median. So those are some of the terminologies that you run into a lot in your field guides. So another strategy, grow it from wild seeds. Just when you see something that you like, collect seeds from it. Just grab the seed heads. If something catches your eye, I keep brown paper bags in my day pack. I have a little wad of brown paper bags with me all the time, and I will just grab seed heads from the roadside or from beside the trail and pack them in these little brown paper bags. I leave them in the little brown paper bags on my bookshelf until January. Then I mix them in with some moist soil mix and put them in a Ziploc bag in the fridge. And I put, a whole stack of Ziploc bags in the fridge, and then down with the vegetables in a big Ziploc bag. They're all packed together. And then in the spring, March or April, I'll take all that soil mix and sprinkle it into pots. It doesn't always work. It's kind of a blunt tool approach to getting wild plants in your yard, but it worked with these purple disc sunflowers. And I like those. They're beautiful. It has worked for me with this helenium. Also beautiful roadside plants. I see a lot around the river. It has worked for me with these asters, roadside, Bidens, roadside. These are just seed heads, which I have just grabbed from beside the road, put them in a bag, put them in the fridge, in January, take them out of the fridge. In April, put the soil mix with the seeds mixed in pots, and there you go. I have a huge variety of asters, different colors that I've gotten from the road, which I just love the asters. Skippers love the asters. Skippers love Bidens. Next strategy, just buy it. Buy the seeds, buy the plants. We buy seeds for flowers every year. Tithonia is one of the best. Really, it's just hard to beat Tithonia. Swallowtails love it. Skippers love it. Goldfinches love it. Hummingbirds love it. It is an amazing plant for attracting diversity in your garden. It's not native, but it is not invasive. It hasn't spread on my farm, and I plant probably 50 every year. You can save your own seeds. You can get the plants from Reems Creek Nursery, or you can buy the seeds. This butterfly here is a really beautiful butterfly. It is a long-tailed skipper. It is in the spread-wing skipper family. Sometimes their wings are spread, sometimes not, but they do have a long tail. And interestingly, they are a fall migrant from the south. They overwinter in the south, and then they come north and they lay eggs in the late fall here. And sometimes those eggs will make it, sometimes they won't. I rarely see these in the spring. I have seen one in the spring, so that's an example of one of those eggs that made it. But when we get them here in the fall, they have flown here from the south. There's much more butterfly migration going on than is really commonly thought. A lot of butterflies that you see don't come from here. I say a lot, it may be 10 or 20%, but there's a lot of butterfly migration going on. This is bright light cosmos. It's a really great butterfly attractant. All butterflies seem to like it. Swallowtails, skippers, nymphs. This is another view of the long-tailed skipper, really one of our gaudiest, most beautiful butterflies that we have in the area. Fall migrant from the south. Here is a fall migrant from the north. This is a Gulf Fritillary, and this particular individual is more black. They're variable, but this one has more black on it than the run-of-the-mill Gulf Fritillary. But these guys come through in the thousands from the north in the fall to the south, and they overwinter in Florida. And their migration is probably 2 generations, maybe more. I'm not sure, but these migrating butterflies have a multi-generational migration pattern where the one that leaves Florida and the one that comes back to Florida are definitely not the same individuals. And like with monarchs, that could be 4 or 5 generations in between when they leave Mexico and when they get back to Mexico. At least 4 or 5 generations.
Hey, Pete,
Yes.
that Gulf Fritillary, I have some of those caterpillars in my yard right now. So
Yep.
are those caterpillars going to turn into a butterfly that will actually then fly south, or?
Yes, and if you got a caterpillar in the spring, which would be pretty uncommon but possible, then that one would somehow know, because the days are lengthening. When that caterpillar turned into a butterfly, it would fly north. And then in the fall, when the days are shortening, they know to fly south. And there's more to it than that, but they know which way they're going. Here's another example of the bright light cosmos, which has got a common buckeye on it. Great one for your garden, great flower for butterflies. Lasts a long time. So I really think that with creating diversity in your yard, in your garden, let your curiosity lead you, let your eye lead you. There's not just one diversity, there's all different kinds of diversity. There's a million different flavors of how you can do it. So just get the things that you like in your yard that attract butterflies, and that'll be the fun way for you to do it. And it won't be the same as anybody else's garden. It's not formulaic. So let's talk about some of the resources which can really help you in learning about butterflies, help you in, learning about the host plants, help you in learning about nature in general. This is one of my favorite resources. This is the North Carolina Biodiversity Project. I am on this website every single day, either looking up insects or reporting sightings that I see. And it is just an exemplary website. I want to highlight something from their mission statement. Our efforts focus on creating interactive websites that provide the public with both an accessible source of information on the state's biodiversity, as well as the opportunity to contribute new information of scientific value. So this is just a good summary statement for citizen science. That's what citizen science does. And it is really a growing opportunity for all of us right now, both to get information and to share information. An example from their website of great information that you can get any day of the week. You can go to their website and download a checklist for your county, and it is updated every year. If something goes off the list long enough, it will be taken off. If it is new to the county, it will be there the very next year. So this is the kind of thing they do at the North Carolina Biodiversity Project. And that is, let me just go back a couple of blinks so I can get the web address for you. It is nc-biodiversity.com, and it is really worth getting to know this website if you're a naturalist, if you want to be a naturalist, if you want to learn more about butterflies or dragonflies or tiger beetles or whatever. These guys are serious biologists. They update their information all the time, and they accept information from folks like us. If you want to start submitting, you can start submitting information. You have to get to know them a little bit and build your credibility. But when you do that, they will gladly take your reports of butterflies in the area to keep these lists updated. Another wonderful resource for becoming a naturalist or being a naturalist or for developing yourself as a naturalist is iNaturalist. I use this one all the time. It's a great place to participate. It's a great place to learn. You don't have to build up your credibility here before you can start reporting. You can start reporting immediately. It's easy to sign up. And they use algorithms to help you identify your insects or your animals, and your observations will be confirmed by other users, and it won't really go into the data record until it gets confirmed. But citizen science is just, it's a growing and wonderful opportunity. It is a wonderful way to develop your skills as a naturalist. As an example, I just brought this. This is the iNaturalist map for the Diana Fritillary. So let's look at a couple of things here. One species, just the Diana Fritillary. They only have 254 observations of the Diana Fritillary, where, as you know, many species of butterflies, they'd be up over 1,000. They have had 112 identifiers, 168 observers. So there's a broad spectrum of people participating. But the data that they get on here is good. They just sort it properly. They see who has identified things properly in the past, and they use that to guide them towards getting this stuff identified. So when they have a record over here, like this Diana Fritillary, it was sighted in the Cherokee National Park, you can click on that, get details of that observation. That is considered research grade, which means it's good data. So all these little red dots, these are all sightings, and they all have record details, good data there. Wonderful place to learn, wonderful place to put up observations. Everything from iNaturalist to North Carolina Biodiversity Project gets sorted through and eventually will end up at the state website. And this is a wonderful example of citizen science in action and the benefits that it can have. The Natural Heritage Program is a state program, part of the Natural and Cultural Resources Department. And these folks are serious about keeping all records of rare animals. So if you submit a rare animal to iNaturalist, these people are going to catch it, and it is going to make it up onto their website. They go through iNaturalist all the time. We recently had a lamprey sighted in Hot Springs by a friend of mine, and they called me a couple days later and said, get me the details on that lamprey. So this is really how the benefits of citizen science can come back to society, that this stuff is then being used at the state level for decision making. And your input in this process can be meaningful. Books and pamphlets, in spite of all the technology we can use here, books and pamphlets are still indispensable. The generation of laminated pamphlets that you can tuck in your back pocket are great. If you go out with one of these laminated butterfly pamphlets in your back pocket, 90% of what you see any given day is going to be on that one pamphlet. For a field guide, I like Kaufman's field guide. One of the reasons I like it is because it has a tough exterior. If you're going to carry these things around in your pocket or under your belt, it's nice to have a flexible shell, a tough shell, and great illustrations that you can use and that you like. So, but cameras have taken away a lot of the utility of these things. Frequently, I'll end up without a field guide, and I will just try to get pictures with my phone or with my camera and go home and make the identification later that day. So that is it, my friends. Thank you for joining me. I think we have question and answer time now, don't we, Gail?
Yeah, that's right. So let's see.
Let me get myself back here, get rid of screen sharing.
So one of the questions in the chat is, has anyone noticed fewer butterflies and bees this summer?
Yes.
My
Yep.
yard is usually full of both, but rare this year.
Yes, that is being reported down east. I have not noticed that in the mountains, but we have heard a lot of reports from that on, and you can get linked into those kinds of reports through North Carolina Biodiversity Project and get those. There's also a list served through Duke. Trying to remember, if you do butterfly, Google butterfly listserv Duke, you'll come up with a listserv. You can sign up and get onto their email list and get reports every day from all over the state, the butterflies that are coming up. And yes, there has been a lot of that reporting. It's alarming. A lot of biologists are alarmed by it. It's not being attached to any particular thing. You know, across Europe, I know they've measured dramatic declines in just the overall biomass of insects. So I don't know what to say. It doesn't seem to be occurring in the mountains. We had a great year for butterflies in the mountains in Madison County, but down east where a lot of the butterfly observers are, a lot of them reported declines in numbers and diversity. So yes.
And Pete, before, I just want to interject before we take any other questions to just thank you so much for this presentation. It was awesome. I loved learning about all these different butterflies. And I wanted to ask anyone, we do have a evaluation survey that if you leave your email in the chat, we will send that to you and then send you a coupon once you filled out. And we do have a lot of the plants that Pete mentioned. We usually have buttonbush. I'm not sure if we have it right now. Ironweed, asters. In the spring, we have Tithonia in both seeds and 4-packs, and a lot of these plants. So anyway, let me go back to thank you for the great presentation. Excited that the plants you mentioned are in my quote weed patch. Only had one monarch make it to chrysalis. One other disappeared. I've had much fewer hummingbirds this year. Love your photography. And so y'all, here's your chance to ask Pete any questions you might have. Recommendation for lens attachment to phone.
No, I can't make that recommendation. I know they're common. I've seen them used. I know they work. I've seen the results, but I have never used one. I use a Sony camera with a macro lens. So I cannot make a recommendation on that. I wish I could. The binoculars, though, the Pentax Papilio, those are wonderful binoculars for butterflies because you can focus up to 18 inches in, or down to 18 inches, I should say. So, yeah, and for really watching
Pete,
butterflies.
wait, do you mind saying the title of those binoculars again?
Yeah, Pentax Papilio. They're made specifically for butterfly watching, and they will focus all the way down to 18 inches, which, you know, you're lucky to get that close to a butterfly, but it's great because butterfly binoculars frequently don't focus that close. So it's hard to get a good look at them from, you know, you sometimes have to step back. I don't use Papilio. I use a more expensive butterfly binocular from Vortex, but I have used them. I don't own them, but I have used them, and they are great. I can't recommend them highly enough, especially because I think they're around $100, really cheap for a good working pair of binoculars. And I think they have a good warranty on them too if they get broken.
So there's a question from Phyllis. Could brushy feet scrape host plant to be sure it's the right plant? I'm not sure. Kim Bailey believes that's what monarchs do with milkweed.
Okay, Kim Bailey knows more about monarchs than me, so I will definitely defer to her.
But she says brushy feet scrape.
Oh, could they scrape? Could they use their brush? Oh, because they are they're nymphs, they're brush-footed butterflies. I don't know what they do with those brush feet. I have just read once that it was in courtship, but that is not a reliable enough source of information. So, but if Kim Bailey says something about it, a word for it. She's quite the monarch student.
So lots of great presentation comments. Does anyone have any more questions for Pete this morning? What's that snout about with star?
With star. Oh, satyr. Satyr.
Oh, satyr. Okay.
Good question. I don't know what that snout is about with the satyrs. I wish I did. I should know. I don't. I know some of also the gossamer wing, the Lacinidae blues in their kin also have that snout. It may be aerodynamics. It may just be because they're flying around really quickly, and that might just help them get a little extra lift. That's just a guess. I don't know, but it's not just in the satyrs. Other butterflies have that snout. Sometimes it's pretty long, and sometimes in, like, for example, in the dusky wing, it can appear as like two horns on the top of the head. So there's something going on there. I haven't studied it.
Okay, from Johnson, what's the best way to provide water for butterflies?
You know, never thought about it. I live by a river, so it's not really an issue, but I know they get water from nectar. I do see them landing on wet gravel a lot, landing beside puddles a lot. I would guess if you just keep your garden nice and wet, that you'll have plenty of water for the butterflies. And they love minerals. They will, if you have some gravel around someplace, they will land on gravel. But a good answer there is watch them and see what they're doing in your neighborhood. I wish I had more to say about that, though.
Any other questions? I think that's it, Pete, unless you have something else to add before we say goodbye. And there's a comment. Thanks so much. Really learned so much about the variety of butterflies in our area and flowers to plant to bring more in. Thank you again.
For sure. Good to see you, Ruth. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I appreciate you all, and hope to see you out on the trail somewhere.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, Pete. Bye.
Bye-bye.